I have been selected.
The inauguration of Herbert Hoover, March 4th, 1929.
Of the country. I propose to do so to the extent of my own ability. But the measure of success that the government shall attain will depend upon the moral support which you, as citizens, extend. If we survey the situation of our nation, both at home and abroad, we find many satisfactions. We find some causes for concern. We have emerged from the losses of the Great War and the reconstruction following it with increased virility and strength.
In Herbert Hoover, America had her first international-minded president in a decade. During the First World War, he ran a food relief program in Belgium. His name meant groceries for the starving and medicine for the sick. Hoover's work lasted 5 years, all of it voluntary. His service reinforced his strong faith in American ideals, hard work, self-reliance, enterprise. During Hoover's presidency, economic growth seemed unlimited. Paper profits on the stock market soared into the billions of dollars. During the 1920s, Americans were on a get-rich-quick binge. Increased industrial production coined profits for the country's leading industries. Higher profits raised corporate expectations and production. The cycle accelerated at an incredible rate. And through it all, speculation in the stock market pushed prices to dizzying heights.
Life is just a bowl of cherries. Don't take it serious. It's too mysterious. You work, you save, you worry so, but you can't take your dough when you go, go, go. So keep repeating it's the berries. The strongest oak must fall. The sweet things in life to you were just loaned. So how can you lose what you've never owned? Life is just a bowl of cherries. So live and laugh at it all.
I have no fears for the future of our country. It is bright with hope.
We always had faith in the land, rock-bound, inviolable. But by 1929, it was apparent that something was very wrong with the country. The story began almost out of sight of most Americans, on the farms. An advance warning of the Depression could be seen in rural America, where farmer after farmer came up against a wall of impossible economic barriers. Supply had outstripped demand, the cost of farm equipment had soared. Farms that had been in families for generations were lost. Farmers and their families watched helplessly as they were driven from their homes. Through the 1920s, farm prices dropped 60%, taxes went up, income went down, interest and mortgage payments continued. The inevitable result was foreclosure. World War I had caused the crisis. Farmers had bought land and machinery to meet wartime demands. The armistice wiped out the market and brought on disaster. By 1935, 750,000 farms would be lost. Earlier in 1929, there were other danger signs. Textile workers in Gastonia, North Carolina went on strike, protesting low pay and long hours. State militia, private detectives, and angry mobs attacked the strikers. 4 workers were killed, one of them a mother of 4 children. Communists were blamed for the strike rather than a sick economy. But Gastonia was obscured by the general prosperity of the 1920s.
The tremendous crowds which you see gathered outside the stock exchange are due to the greatest crash in the history of the New York Stock Exchange in market prices.
Not the event of one day. It really spread out across a week, and it's sort of the fall went on for almost 3 weeks, from late October into middle November. After that, the market began to recover, and it actually gained back during the winter something like 1/3 of what it had lost. And it looked like recovery was on the way. Everybody was looking not at the market, but at the economy.
The crash on a particular day in 1929 was something like 24, 25%. But actually, from 1929 to the bottom of the stock market, the entire decline was 80%.
In fact, Wall Street had already started its long, interminable descent into hell, and the whole of America's economic activity followed this downward slope until it reached the depths of the abyss.
In one period of 5 days, $30 billion in paper profits had vanished into thin air. The Great Depression had begun, though few people knew it. At first, only a handful were unemployed. Workers suddenly jobless bought surplus apples on credit, then sold them at a profit. This was the American spirit at work. President Hoover admired their enterprise and called for more of the same.
My concern in dealing with the problems of these times has been to avert hunger or cold amongst those upon whom the blows have fallen with heartbreaking severity, that is, our unemployed workers. No one who has seen this battle as I have seen it, with the stout efforts of American faith and confidence in her people, could harbor a doubt for the future of the American people.
People, as they lost their homes, had to go somewhere, and they went largely into these makeshift huts that they put together with cardboard and tin and leftover materials. They slept in caves in Central Park.
There are tent cities all over America of homeless people that are called Hoovervilles in mocking disdain for what Hoover has visited upon the country.
Central Park in New York City had a number of Hoovervilles, and Hoovervilles were for a number of years the shame of our society.
Once I lived the life of a millionaire, spending my money, Lord, I didn't care. I carried my friends out for a mighty good time, buying bootleg liquor, champagne and wine. Then I begun to fall so low. Didn't have no money and no place to go. If I get my hands on a dollar again, I'm gonna hold on to it till the eagle grins, because nobody knows you when you're down and down. In your pockets, not one penny, and your friends, you have not any. But when you get on your feet again, everybody wants to be your long-lost friend.
A fundamental belief of the American people, upon which they supported an isolationist foreign policy in the 20s, was that the United States was inherently too strong for the world to challenge. This belief vanished not as a result of war, but because of economic decay. The American people learned through the agonies of the Great Depression that foreign affairs meant something more than diplomats, armies, and treaties. The collapse of 29 was not only the most serious challenge ever presented to the face of American optimism, it was also the beginning of an awareness that the United States could not isolate herself from the world. Americans now began to ask whether it was possible for their nation to be self-sufficient, and a majority concluded it could not be. The Civil War was America's first great failure. The Depression was the second.
The reaction, the official reaction to the crash of the market is a sense of shock, disbelief, and hubris, a sense that if they act and simply assure people that everything is all right, the market will immediately recover. John D. Rockefeller goes and buys some stock in a very public way to show that he too is confident that the economy is sound and the market is sound.
In the United States, the shock wave of the stock exchange collapse had not subsided before the effects of the terrible, irreversible spiral of recession began to be felt. American industrial production dropped by half. Thousands of families had to rely on the soup kitchen for food.
The economy did not recover, and by June, because spring was usually the big month for when the economy begins to perk up for the coming season, didn't happen. And as a result, the bottom just sort of fell out of the market again, and the country drifted along until about October. And it's not until really about October of '30 that the country begins to fall into a depression.
America's sturdiest strongholds collapsed after the Wall Street crash. It was in stark contrast to the recent period of rapid growth. 1 worker in 5 was unemployed. The population seemed anesthetized. In New York, where every month 17,000 families were put on the streets, hundreds of thousands of unemployed, including many white-collar workers, struggled to survive, trudging through the cold for hours just to get a bowl of soup and a piece of bread.
Once I built a railroad, made it run, made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once in khaki suits, gee, we looked swell, full of that Yankee Doodle-Dum. 500,000 boots went slogging through hell, and I was the kid with a drum. Say, don't you remember they called me Al? It was Al all the time. Say, don't you remember I'm your pal? Buddy, can you spare a